Richard Kane sat in his expensive car outside the small diner, feeling tired and lost. The rain made soft sounds on the windows as he looked at the simple building. It was not the kind of place he usually went to eat. Most days he ate at fancy restaurants or had meals brought to his office. But today was different. Today he needed somewhere quiet to think. His son Danny sat next to him in the back seat, looking out the window with big brown eyes. Danny was 12 years old, but he was not like other children his age. He had trouble walking straight, and his words came out slowly and unclear. The doctors had tried many treatments, but nothing seemed to help much. Richard spent millions of dollars trying to find ways to make Danny better, but he was running out of hope. The diner looked warm and friendly from the outside. There were bright lights in the windows, and Richard could see people inside eating and talking. He made up his mind and got out of the car. He walked around to help Danny out, holding his arm gently as they walked to the door. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee and fresh bread. There were red seats and white tables. An old jukebox in the corner played music from many years ago. Most of the customers were working people having lunch. They looked at Richard in his expensive suit and Danny with his careful, slow steps, but then went back to their own conversations. A young woman with dark skin and kind eyes came over to them with menus. She wore a simple uniform and had her hair pulled back. Her name tag said Maya. "Hello there," she said with a warm smile. "Would you like a table by the window?" Richard nodded and followed her to a quiet corner table. Maya helped Danny sit down and made sure he was comfortable before giving them the menus. "The soup today is really good," she told them. "And we have fresh apple pie." Richard ordered coffee and a sandwich. Danny pointed at the pictures on the menu to show what he wanted. Maya was patient with him and did not seem bothered when he took a long time to decide. After she brought their food, Danny kept looking at the jukebox. The music was soft and had a nice beat. Richard noticed that Danny was moving his shoulders a little bit with the rhythm. This was unusual because Danny rarely moved unless he had to. Maya saw it too. When she came back to check on them, she knelt down next to Danny's chair. "Do you like the music?" she asked him. Danny nodded and made a small sound that meant yes. "That jukebox is really old," Maya said. "It has been here since my grandmother was young. Would you like to see how it works?" Danny looked at his father. Richard felt nervous about letting Danny go with a stranger, but something about Maya seemed safe and kind. "It's okay," Richard said quietly. Maya took Danny's hand very gently and helped him walk to the jukebox. She showed him the buttons and the colored lights. She put in some coins and let Danny pick a song. When the new music started, it was slower and prettier than the last song. Danny started to sway back and forth. His movements were not smooth like other children, but there was something beautiful about the way he moved to the music. Maya watched him with a big smile on her face. Richard could not believe what he was seeing. His son, who could barely walk without falling, was dancing. It was not perfect dancing, but it was real joy. For the first time in months, Danny looked truly happy. Other people in the diner stopped talking to watch. Some smiled. Nobody laughed or stared in a mean way. They all seemed to understand that something special was happening. Richard felt tears in his eyes as he watched his son find a moment of pure happiness in this simple place with this kind young woman who saw something good in Danny that the rest of the world often missed. Maya watched Danny move to the music and felt something warm in her heart. She had been working at the diner for 2 years, serving all kinds of people. Most customers were nice, but they were always in a hurry. They ordered their food, ate quickly, and left. Danny was different. He was not trying to impress anyone or get somewhere fast. He was just enjoying the music. The song playing was slow and sweet. Danny's movements were not like the dancing Maya had seen on television or in movies. His steps were uneven and his arms moved in ways that might look strange to some people. But Maya could see something that others might miss. Danny was feeling the music in his heart, and his body was trying to show that feeling. Maya made a decision. That would change everything. She looked around the diner to make sure her boss was not watching. Then she stepped closer to Danny, very slowly and gently. She held out her hand to him. Danny looked at her hand, then at her face. His eyes were wide with surprise. No one outside his family had ever asked him to dance before. Most people acted like he could not do normal things. But Maya was looking at him like he was just a regular boy who loved music. Danny reached out and took her hand. His grip was weak, but Maya could feel how much he wanted to try. She began to move very slowly, helping him find the rhythm of the song. She did not try to make him dance like everyone else. Instead, she followed his natural movements and helped him make them smoother. At first, Danny was nervous. He kept looking at his feet, worried about making mistakes. But Maya squeezed his hand gently and smiled at him. She moved in a way that made it easy for him to follow. When he stumbled a little, she just adjusted her steps to match his. When he moved his arm in an unusual way, she made it part of their dance. Other people in the diner began to notice what was happening. The conversations got quieter. Some customers turned in their seats to watch. An older man at the counter put down his coffee cup. A woman with her young daughter pointed toward the jukebox. But nobody laughed or said anything mean. They all seemed to understand that they were seeing something special. Richard sat at his table, unable to believe his eyes. His son was dancing. Really dancing? Not the awkward movements that doctors had tried to teach him in therapy. This was different. This was Danny expressing himself through movement, and Maya was helping him do it. The song reached its most beautiful part, and Maya guided Danny in a slow turn. He giggled with pure joy, a sound Richard had not heard in years. Maya laughed too, and their happiness filled the whole diner. For these few minutes, Danny was not a disabled child. He was just a boy dancing with a friend. When the song ended, everyone in the diner clapped. It was not loud clapping like at a show. It was gentle and respectful, like people do when they have seen something that touched their hearts. Danny looked around at all the smiling faces and clapped his hands too. Maya knelt down so she was the same height as Danny. "You are a wonderful dancer," she told him. "The music sounds better when you move to it." Danny made a happy sound and hugged her. Maya hugged him back, and Richard saw tears in her eyes. Just then, the television above the counter made a loud, beeping sound. The regular program stopped, and a news reporter appeared on the screen. Her face looked serious and excited at the same time. "We interrupt this program for breaking news," the reporter said. "Scientists at the Space Monitoring Center have detected unusual energy signals coming from outside our solar system. The signals appear to be artificial and are moving toward Earth at incredible speed. Government officials are calling an emergency meeting to discuss what this might mean." The diner became very quiet. Everyone stared at the television. Richard felt his heart beating fast. Danny was still holding Maya's hand. Not understanding what the news meant, Maya looked at the screen, then at Danny, then at Richard. Something had changed in the world, but right here in this small diner, something beautiful had also happened. She had a feeling that both events would be important in ways no one could imagine yet. 3 days after the news about the strange signals, the world felt different. Richard could not stop thinking about what he had seen at the diner. Danny had been different too since that day. He moved around their big house with more confidence. Sometimes Richard caught him humming the song from the jukebox and moving his arms like he was dancing again. The television news talked about nothing except the mysterious signals from space. Scientists said the signals were definitely made by intelligent beings, not natural space events. The objects sending the signals would reach Earth in just a few weeks. World leaders were meeting every day to decide what to do. Richard owned one of the biggest technology companies in the world. His company made the communication systems that spaceships used to talk to Earth when they traveled to other planets. Because of this, government officials kept calling him for meetings about the approaching visitors. But Richard found it hard to pay attention to their serious discussions. All he could think about was Maya and how she had helped Danny dance. On Thursday morning, Richard made a decision. Instead of going to another government meeting, he drove back to the diner. He needed to see Maya again and understand what had happened between her and his son. The diner looked the same as before, but Maya was not working. An older woman with gray hair was serving customers instead. "Excuse me," Richard said politely. "Is Maya working today?" The woman looked at his expensive clothes and seemed nervous. "Maya only works evenings this week. She goes to school during the day." "What kind of school?" Richard asked. "University," the woman said. "She studies something about space and aliens." Very smart girl, that Maya. Richard felt surprised. Maya was studying space science while working as a waitress. He asked the woman for Maya's full name and learned it was Maya Johnson. That afternoon, he used his company's computers to find out more about her. Maya was 22 years old and studied xenobiology at the university. Xenobiology was the science of life forms that might exist on other planets. She had excellent grades and had written several papers about how different species might communicate with each other. One of her papers was about communication without words, using movement and body language instead of talking. Richard read Maya's papers on his computer. She wrote about how many animals on Earth use dance and movement to share information with each other. Birds did special dances to find mates. Bees danced to tell other bees where to find flowers. Maya believed that if humans ever met aliens, movement and dance might be better ways to communicate than speaking, especially at first. Reading this made Richard think about Danny and the jukebox again. Maya had not just been kind to his son. She had been using her scientific knowledge to communicate with Danny in a way that worked better than words. That evening, Richard went back to the diner. Maya was there, taking orders and serving food. When she saw him, she smiled and came over to his table. "How is Danny?" she asked. "I have been thinking about him. He has been dancing every day since we came here," Richard told her. "I think you gave him something important." Maya sat down across from him. The diner was not very busy, so she had time to talk. "I study how different creatures communicate," Maya explained. "Danny understands music and movement better than words." "That's not a problem. That's a gift." Richard told Maya about the space signals and the meetings he had been attending. The government's plan was to use radio signals and mathematical formulas to try to talk to the aliens when they arrived. Maya frowned. "What if the aliens don't communicate the way we do? What if they use movement or music or something else we have not thought of?" "The experts think math is universal," Richard said. "They believe any intelligent species would understand numbers and formulas." "Maybe," Maya said. "But what if they are wrong? What if we need to find a different way too? Show we are friendly?" Richard looked at Maya's serious face and remembered how she had connected with Danny when words had failed. Maybe the government experts were missing something important. Maybe they needed to think about communication in a completely different way. "Would you be willing to help?" Richard asked. "The aliens will be here soon, and I think we might need your ideas about how to talk to them." Maya nodded slowly. "If it might help prevent a war, yes, I will do whatever I can." Neither of them knew that Danny's simple dance at the jukebox would soon become the key to saving the entire human race. The next morning, Maya met Richard at his company's main building. She had never been inside such a tall, modern office before. Everything was made of glass and metal, and people in expensive suits walked quickly through the hallways. Maya felt nervous in her simple clothes, but Richard made her feel welcome. He took her to a special room where his best scientists worked. There were huge computer screens showing the approaching alien ships. The ships looked like nothing humans had ever built. They were long and curved, almost like they were dancing through space as they moved. "The aliens will arrive in 12 days, Richard explained to Maya. "Our government has a plan to contact them using radio signals and mathematics. But I want you to look at everything we know and tell me what you think." Maya spent the whole day studying the information about the alien ships. The ships moved in strange patterns as they flew through space. They did not travel in straight lines like human spaceships. Instead, they curved and flowed, almost like they were swimming through the stars. "Look at this," Maya said, pointing to the computer screen. "See how their ships move? They are not just getting from one place to another. The way they fly looks like a pattern, like a dance." The scientists in the room looked at each other with doubt. "Ships have to follow the laws of physics," one of Them said they probably move that way to save fuel or avoid space rocks. But Maya shook her head. What if the way they move is how they communicate? What if every curve and turn means something? Richard watched Maya work and remembered how she had understood Danny's movements at the diner. She saw things that other people missed. That evening, Richard brought Danny to Maya's small apartment near the university. Maya lived in 2 simple rooms filled with books about space and biology. She had pictures of animals dancing on her walls, birds spreading their wings, dolphins jumping, and bees flying in circles. Danny looked at the pictures with great interest. Maya showed him videos on her computer of different animals communicating through movement. There were whales singing and moving through the ocean, wolves running together in special patterns, and ants following dance-like paths to share information. All of these creatures talk to each other without words, Maya explained to Danny, just like you did at the diner when you danced. Danny watched the videos carefully. Then he stood up and began to move around Maya's small living room. He was copying some of the movements he had seen the animals make, but he was making them his own. Richard realized that his son was learning a new kind of language. Danny understands this better than we do, Maya said softly. Children learn movement and rhythm before they learn words. Maybe that's how we should try to talk to the aliens first. The next day, Richard arranged a meeting with the government officials in charge of the alien contact plan. He brought Maya with him to the big conference room in Washington. Important people from the military, NASA, and the United Nations were all there. Maya felt scared to speak in front of so many powerful people, but she knew this might be humanity's only chance to make peaceful contact with the aliens. What if the aliens don't understand our radio signals? She asked the room full of officials. What if they communicate through movement instead of sounds or numbers? General Williams, the man in charge of Earth's defense, looked annoyed. Miss Johnson, we have the best scientists in the world working on this. Mathematics is the universal language. Any intelligent species would understand basic math. But what if they don't? Maya insisted. What if we send them math problems and they think we are being rude or threatening? What if they communicate through dance and music and we are speaking to them in a language they don't use? Dr. Peterson, the head scientist, stood up. Young lady, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but we cannot base our first contact plan on the idea that aliens communicate through dancing. Richard spoke up. What if she's right? What if we get one chance to make a good first impression, and we waste it because we are too proud to try a different approach? The room became quiet. Everyone knew that if the first contact went wrong, it could mean war with beings who had technology far beyond anything humans possessed. Finally, General Williams sighed. What exactly are you suggesting, Miss Johnson? Maya took a deep breath. Let me and Danny try to communicate with them using movement and rhythm. If it doesn't work, you can still use your math signals. But let us try first. The officials looked at each other with uncertainty. The fate of the entire human race might depend on a waitress, a disabled boy, and their belief in the power of dance. The space station where they would meet the aliens was called Freedom Station. It floated high above Earth, farther from home than any human had ever been. Richard held Danny's hand as they walked through the metal hallways of the station. The boy looked excited rather than scared, which amazed his father. Maya walked beside them, carrying a small bag with some music players and simple instruments. The government had finally agreed to let them try their approach, but only because all other attempts to contact the aliens had failed. The radio signals and math formulas had gotten no response. The alien ships had simply continued moving toward Earth in their strange, flowing patterns. General Williams and his team were also on the station, ready to take over if Maya's plan did not work. They had weapons and defensive systems prepared, though everyone hoped they would not need them. Remember, Maya whispered to Danny as they entered the large meeting room. Just do what feels natural. Listen to your heart, not your head. The meeting room had huge windows that looked out into space. Through the windows, they could see 3 alien ships approaching. The ships were beautiful and strange, shaped like long teardrops made of some material that seemed to glow with soft light. They moved through space like fish swimming through water, turning and flowing in graceful curves. "They're here," someone announced over the radio. One of the alien ships came very close to the space station. A section of the ship opened up, and a bridge of light connected the ship to the station. The aliens were coming aboard. Richard felt his heart beating fast. Danny squeezed his hand but seemed calm. Maya took deep breaths and prepared herself for the most important moment in human history. The door to the meeting room opened, and the aliens entered. Richard had expected them to look like the monsters in movies, but they were nothing like that. The aliens were tall and thin, with long arms and legs. Their skin was pale blue and seemed to shimmer like water. They had large, dark eyes and moved with incredible grace. Every step they took looked like part of a dance. There were 3 of them, and they moved together like they were one creature with 3 bodies. When one turned its head, the others turned theirs in the same direction. When one lifted its arm, the others made similar movements. It was beautiful and strange at the same time. The aliens stopped in the center of the room and looked at the humans. Their large eyes seemed curious but careful. They made no sounds, but their bodies swayed slightly. Like trees moving in a gentle wind, General Williams stepped forward and began to speak into a device that was supposed to translate human words into mathematical signals. "Welcome to our solar system. We come in peace and wish to establish communication." The aliens tilted their heads and looked confused. They made no response to the general's words or the mathematical signals. Maya touched Danny's shoulder gently. "Now," she whispered. Danny looked at the aliens and seemed to understand something that the adults could not see. He let go of his father's hand and took a small step forward. The aliens watched him with interest. Danny began to move the way Maya had taught him at the diner. He swayed gently from side to side, then raised his arms slowly above his head. His movements were not perfect, but they were full of joy and peace. The aliens looked at each other, and something amazing happened. They began to move too. Their movements matched Danny's rhythm, but they were more flowing and graceful. It looked like they were answering him in their own language of dance. Danny giggled and tried to copy their movements. Maya stepped forward and joined the dance, helping Danny follow the aliens' graceful motions. Together, the human woman and the disabled boy began to communicate with beings from another world. The aliens moved closer, their faces showing what looked like happiness. One of them reached out very slowly and gently touched Danny's hand. The touch was warm and kind, and Danny smiled up at the tall alien with complete trust. Richard watched with tears in his eyes as his son, who had always struggled to fit in with human society, became the first person to successfully communicate with an alien species. The dance continued, growing more beautiful and complex as both sides learned each other's movements. In that moment, Richard understood that Maya had been right all along. The universal language was not mathematics or radio signals. It was the language of the heart expressed through movement and shared joy.